31st July 1966, Wembley Stadium, London. The day didn't start like history. It started with rain. At 7:42 that Saturday morning, 42-year-old Michael Patterson woke in his terraced house in Manchester. The bedroom was cold. The wallpaper was peeling at the corners. Through the thin walls, he could hear his neighbor's wireless crackling to life. The BBC announcer's voice urgent. England versus West Germany, the World Cup final. 3 o'clock kickoff. Michael had never been to London, never been to Wembley, never even been inside a proper stadium. But today, like 32 million other Britons, he would be there. Not in body, but in every other way that mattered. He swung his legs out of bed, his feet finding the cold linoleum floor. Downstairs, his wife John was already in the kitchen, the smell of toast and tea mixing with the damp morning air. Their son David, 9 years old, sat at the table in his England shirt, the one they'd bought him from Woolworths for 2 shillings. The boy's knees bounced under the table. He hadn't slept. "Dad," David said, not looking up from his cereal, "do you think we'll win?" Michael poured his tea, watching the dark liquid swirl with milk. England hadn't won anything in his lifetime. The war had taken the best years, the best players, the best of everything. 21 years since VE Day, and Britain was still recovering. "We might, son," he said. "We just might." 9:15 a.m. The pubs prepare. In Liverpool, Tom Bennett unlocked the doors of the King's Arms 3 hours early. He'd ordered extra bitter, double the usual. The brewery man had laughed at him, but Tom knew. You didn't get a World Cup final at home without the entire nation wanting a pint in hand. By 10 o'clock, the first regulars were arriving. Not to drink yet, not this early, but to claim their spots near the television set he'd rented specially. 12 inches, black and white, balanced on beer crates in the corner. "Don't you bloody touch that," Tom warned as Charlie Morrison reached toward the aerial. "Took me an hour to get the picture right." The BBC test card flickered on screen. A little girl with a clown. Everyone in Britain knew that image. It meant waiting. It meant something was coming. Charlie settled into his spot by the window. At 54, he'd fought in the war, come home with shrapnel in his leg from Normandy. Some mornings he could barely walk. Today he'd arrived at 9:45, earlier than Tom had ever seen him. "Nervous, Charlie?" Tom asked. Charlie lit a cigarette, his hands trembling. "Haven't felt like this since the war, Tom. It's just football." "No," Charlie shook his head. "It's not." 11:30 a.m., the streets empty. Saturday was shopping day, market day, but not today. Shops stayed open, but customers didn't come. Butchers stood behind empty counters. Bakers watched their windows, bread cooling unsold. Even the betting shops had closed. What was the point when everyone was watching the same match? Everyone was going home, or going to someone else's home, or going to the pub, anywhere with a television set. In Edinburgh, 67-year-old Mary Henderson lived alone in a small flat. She had never watched football in her life, never understood the appeal, but her daughter Margaret had called. "Mum, come to ours, everyone's coming. We're watching the match." "I don't like football." "It's not about football, Mum. It's England. Come on." So Mary put on her coat, locked her door, and walked the 3 streets to Margaret's house. Inside, the living room was already full. Her son-in-law, his brother, 2 neighbors, the kids sitting on the floor. Someone had made sandwiches. Someone else had brought beer. The television was on. Still the test card, still waiting. Mary's grandson Peter, 5 years old, tugged at her coat. "Gran, are we going to win?" She looked down at his hopeful face. "I don't know, love," she said honestly, "but I hope so." 1:45 p.m., the nation gathers. By 1:45, Britain had stopped. Factories closed early. Construction sites fell silent. Hospitals were quiet. Nurses clustered around. Portable televisions in staff rooms. In the pubs, men stood 3 deep at the bars. The air was thick with cigarette smoke and nervous energy. Tom Bennett's small television set was now surrounded by 47 people. 47 bodies crammed into a space meant for 20. The heat was oppressive. The smoke was choking. Nobody cared. Charlie Morrison stood in his spot, staring at the screen where pre-match coverage had started. His leg ached. It always ached when it rained, and it was raining at Wembley. He could see it on the television, the gray sky, the wet pitch. "All right, Charlie," Tom asked. "I've got this feeling," Charlie said quietly. "Like everything depends on this. Not just the match. Everything." Tom understood. Everyone understood. This wasn't about football. This was about proving something. In living rooms across the nation, families positioned themselves. Fathers in armchairs, mothers on the sofa, children on the floor. David Patterson lay on his stomach, his England shirt already damp with sweat. His mother sat behind him, her knitting needles clicking nervously. His father stood by the fireplace, one hand on the mantelpiece, unable to sit. The clock on the wall read 2:58. David's heart was beating so fast he could feel it in his ears. He'd been waiting for this moment since England beat Portugal in the semifinal. Since Alf Ramsey had said those words that every British kid was now repeating, "England will win the World Cup." 3 p.m., kickoff. When the whistle blew at Wembley, 96,924 people roared. Outside Wembley, 32 million people held their breath. Kenneth Wolstenholme's voice crackled through speakers. "And here we go, the 1966 World Cup final, England versus West Germany." For 12 minutes, nothing happened. Passes were made. Tackles were attempted. The ball moved up and down the pitch. Tension building, building. Then 12 minutes in, Haller scored for Germany. 0-1. The sound that came from British throats wasn't a scream. It was a wound. In the King's Arms, 47 men groaned as one. Tom Bennett dropped a glass. It shattered on the floor. Nobody moved to clean it up. In Manchester, David Patterson's face pressed into the carpet. Michael wanted to comfort him, but couldn't move. Couldn't look away from the television. Jean set down her knitting. "Come on, David, head up. We're not done yet." 6 minutes later, Jeff Hurst equalized. 1-1. The roar that went up across Britain could probably be heard from space. In the King's Arms, the television nearly fell off its crates. Charlie Morrison caught it just in time, beer sloshing onto his shoes. In Manchester, David exploded off the floor, running in circles around the living room, arms spread like airplane wings, making sounds that weren't words, just pure joy. Michael felt tears on his face. He didn't remember starting to cry, but they were there, hot and wet, and he didn't wipe them away. Half-time, 1-1. When the whistle blew for half-time, Britain exhaled. In pubs, men ordered more drinks. Cigarettes were lit. Conversation started. "We're going to do it. We're actually going to do it." But underneath the optimism, there was fear. The kind that comes when you're so close to something you've wanted for so long. Charlie Morrison sat down for the first time. His leg was screaming, "Tom, we're going to win. I can feel it." Tom wanted to believe him. "I hope you're right, mate. We didn't come this far to lose." Peters scores 2-1 the 78th minute. Martin Peters scored 2-1. England were ahead. The explosion of joy was volcanic. In the King's Arms, Charlie hugged Tom, then hugged strangers. Around him, grown men were crying. Happy crying. The kind that happens when something locked inside you breaks open. In Manchester, Michael picked up his son and swung him around. Jane put her arms around both of them. Through the walls, they could hear the neighbors, the Davises shouting, the Heralds cheering, everyone making noise. David ran to the window. "Dad, everyone's outside." Michael looked. People were pouring into the street. Mr. Davies, Mrs. Harold. People who never spoke, now hugging, dancing, singing. "Can we go out, Dad?" Michael looked at the television. 12 minutes left. "Not yet, son. Match isn't over." Weber scores 2-2 89 minutes. 90 seconds left. Britain was already celebrating. Then Wolfgang Weber scored 2-2. The sound that came from 32 million British throats wasn't anger. It was grief. In the King's Arms, silence. Someone said no. Just that. No. Charlie Morrison's face had gone gray. "It's not fair," he whispered. In Manchester, David lay face down on the carpet, his body shaking with sobs. Michael gripped the mantelpiece, staring at the television. "Extra time," Wolstenholme's voice said. 30 minutes of extra time. Could Britain survive 30 more minutes? Extra time. 101 minutes. 11 minutes into extra time. Still 2-2. Jeff Hurst received the ball, turned, shot. The ball hit the crossbar, bounced down, bounced out. For a fraction of a second, nobody knew. Did it cross the line? The referee was talking to the linesman. Wolstenholme's voice was uncertain. Did the ball cross the line? In Britain, 32 million people stopped breathing. Charlie Morrison's pint froze halfway to his mouth. Tom gripped the bar so hard the wood creaked. In Manchester, Michael's lips were moving. He was praying. He hadn't prayed in 20 years. Please, please, please. Then the referee pointed to the center circle. Goal. 3-2. For one heartbeat, Britain didn't react. Then it hit. The King's Arms exploded. 47 men erupted. Beer flew. Glasses shattered. Charlie was shouting, tears streaming down his face. The television fell. The picture flickered. Nobody cared. In Manchester, Michael jumped. David leaped up, screaming. Michael grabbed him and swung him around, both crying, both laughing. Jean was standing on the sofa, arms in the air, screaming, "Yes! Yes! Yes!" Outside, the street had exploded. Everyone was outside now. 120 minutes. The final seconds. Wolstenholme's voice. Some people are on the pitch. They think it's all over. Jeff Hurst received the ball. Ran. Shot. It is now. 4-2. The final whistle blew. Britain exploded. Within minutes, streets that had been empty were full. In cities across Britain, impromptu parties erupted. Someone brought beer. Children ran with flags. Adults who'd been strangers stood arm in arm singing, "We've won the cup! We've won the cup!" In Edinburgh, Mary Henderson watched Mr. Patterson dancing in the road. This man who never smiled, spinning and laughing. "Mum, are you all right?" her daughter asked. Mary nodded. She'd lived through 2 wars, depression, rationing, loss. But this was Britain at its best. In Manchester, Michael, Jean, and David went outside. The street was full. Everyone hugging, everyone singing. David sat on his father's shoulders. "Dad, is this the best day ever?" Michael looked up at his son. "Yes, son, it is." Long after sunset, the celebrations continued. David fell asleep on the floor, still in his England shirt. His mother covered him with a blanket. In the King's Arms, Tom called last orders at midnight. Charlie was the last to leave, limping into streets still echoing with song. Tom locked the door and sat in the empty pub. The national anthem played on the television. He stood and saluted. The next morning, England win World Cup. Every front page, every headline. Michael bought 5 newspapers. He spread them across the table. David came downstairs and climbed onto his lap. Together, they looked at the photographs. Bobby Moore holding the trophy. "Dad, will we ever win again?" Michael thought carefully. "Maybe not, son, but we'll always have yesterday." For the rest of their lives, everyone alive on July 30th, 1966, would carry that day with them. Charlie Morrison would tell the story until he died in 1983, every detail preserved. Mary Henderson would live until 1994. Nothing would ever compare to that day she danced in her slippers. Michael Patterson would frame the newspapers, would try to explain to his grandchildren what it felt like, would fail because some things can only be experienced. In 2016, David Patterson, now 59, sat before a camera. "I can still see my father's face," he said. "When Hurst scored that 4th goal, my dad picked me up and hugged me so tight, and he was crying. I'd never seen my dad cry before." What did that mean? It meant that for one perfect day, he got to feel pure joy again. July 30th, 1966. It was just one day, just 90 minutes of football. But for 32 million people watching across Britain, it was the day Michael Patterson's son learned what hope looked like. It was the day Charlie Morrison celebrated a different kind of victory. It was the day Mary Henderson remembered what joy felt like. It was the day Britain won the World Cup. For one perfect day, Britain was united. Rich and poor, north and south, everyone watching the same thing, feeling the same thing. For one perfect day, nothing else mattered. For one perfect day, we won. Where were you on July 30th, 1966? Share your memory in the comments below. Subscribe for more untold stories from Britain's greatest moments.